members due to the size of the site. There have been no local objections to date on this scheme. In terms of principle, a dual use of equine and farming activity in this location, which is rural at a significant distance from neighbouring residents, is considered acceptable. It will help to support and sustain the farming business and relates to genuine diversification. In terms of form and design, the proposal is considered to be acceptable in terms of visual amenity and in relation to character and form of the locality. Really limited operational development has actually occurred, and the physical structures are unlikely to be seen from public views. We have, however, recommended a condition to prevent further lighting without details first being submitted to the local planning authority. And there's also a condition to ensure that the arena lighting is only on when in use. The use of the storage container for a WC and kitchenette is also, in this situation, considered acceptable. Following the site visit, it was apparent that a landscaping condition isn't considered necessary. In terms of neighbouring amenity, as detailed, it's not considered this would have any adverse neighbour impact. No objections have been received. In terms of access and highway safety, North Yorkshire Highway officers have been consulted and have confirmed no objection. And you've seen the kind of good access that the site benefits from in the photographs. In terms of drainage, members will have read the report, which had a detailed drainage section, and it clearly indicates that there's been a significant reduction in hard standing across the application site. There's a detailed supporting statement which outlines the history behind this retrospective scheme. It includes the reuse of existing buildings and concrete bases associated with the previous agricultural use, to provide all the stable and on-site, and the existing storage buildings also retained. The arena, the lunge pen, and the horse walker also entirely utilise permeable surfacing. There's a really small section of the path, the horse walker, which is impermeable, graded to a permeable surround. This and the siting of the storage container also demonstrate the very minimal amount of new impermeable surfacing. The drainage on the site would continue to flow to the existing land drains, which is the historic arrangement. Following a final review, the IDB have confirmed on the 18th of October that given the application is outside of our district, we're therefore just looking at the amount of surface water which is likely to enter the board's district. It appears this remains the same / has potentially reduced from what it was previously. On this basis, the board now removes their previous request for a planning condition. The lead local flood authority, in their latest response, have noted that the submitted documents demonstrates a reasonable approach to the management of surface water on the site, but they do then proceed to recommend a number of pre-commencement conditions. I went back to the lead local flood authority yesterday for clarification, as this scheme is retrospective, with the business having been operational for some time. So in my view, it's not appropriate to apply these conditions in their current form because it wouldn't meet the test of soundness for planning conditions. I did highlight if there was any additional information the LLFA would like to see in advance of a decision being made, I'd be happy to approach the applicant again, who I think would be amenable to provide this, but I haven't as yet had a response from the lead local flood authority. Therefore, the recommendation for members is still to delegate this decision to officers to finalise the appropriate drainage conditions, if applicable. As the IDB were able to remove the request for condition, it's hoped the lead local flood authority may take the same approach. So to conclude, officers are recommending the delegation to officers. Thank you.
Thanks, Niamh. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Goodrick.
Just one, because it's a particularly dark sky area, and that's the lighting on the arena. Now, you mentioned that it wouldn't be on when it was in use, but have we determined when use should happen? So if it's going to be late at night, should we be saying actually you need not to be using the arena after 7 or 8 o'clock at night?
I think if we can just go back to the photograph that has the arena on it, I'm not sure what number it is. Yeah, it does look as if they're sort of angled downwards. The interesting thing with this site is the distance from sort of public views and public areas. It is something I can discuss with the applicant and see if they're willing to put something forward.
It's just that it's a dark sky.
Yeah.
That's my only reservation. I've got no problem with it other than the fact that this is really open countryside, and it there are virtually no street lights in this
Yeah.
area. It would be a shame to impact environmentally with big lights on late at night.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can definitely go back to them and just see if
Yeah,
there's a
thank you.
compromise that can be reached.
Yeah, thank you
there.
for that.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, councillor Frank.
There was no mention of manure and what they were doing to use that or retain it, or,
Yeah.
or what they were doing with it. The constables sometimes set bonfires and burn manure, which is not very good these days. So I just wondered if there was anything about that.
I think we have consulted environmental health on this, and they didn't raise any concerns. They didn't provide a consultation response. Sometimes where sites like this, where liveries are closely co-located with residential properties, that is something that we will seek to control. I think in this instance, given it is an existing agricultural site, and the actual equestrian part of that is quite a significant distance away from any neighbouring properties, I think we'd probably feel fairly comfortable that it is something they can probably manage in-house, particularly with having the agricultural land as well. I think lawfully, I'm not sure that burning of stable waste is allowed anymore. So that would be dealt with under separate legislation if that was raised as an issue at any point in the future. But we haven't had any consultation responses from any neighbouring properties, and the Parish Council, I think, has been supportive of this application as well. So it's one of the slightly rarer ones where I think we could feel quite comfortable about them dealing with that internally.
Any more questions?
Sorry,
Yep,
I just
go on.
wanted to come back. Environment Agency, usually they insist on manure heaps being covered, and now they've got to be contained and have a cover so that there isn't any leakage from manure heaps. So I mean, something with all these stables, I'm just saying, sorry, I'm just saying that
Yeah,
maybe something ought to be.
I think we could potentially put on an informative. I can speak with environmental health, and we could put on an informative to remind the applicant of their requirements under separate legislation, and they'll be able to give me the precise wording of what that legislation is, so that could go on a decision notice potentially. Might be a helpful reminder if necessary. Thank you.
Right, no more questions. Right, I have no speakers on this one, so we'll go to debate. Whose patch is this? I thought it might be yours, Caroline.
Technically, it's not my patch, it's Eric's patch, but Eric's not here, unless Janet wants to do it. But it's my division, so the acid test for me is this, because it's retrospective, and I really don't like retrospective. However, the acid test is, do I think I would have allowed it if it had been properly applied for? And I think the answer to that would be yes, I would. I don't think it has any impact. It's not visible. The site is barely visible from the nearest road. Thorntonfield House, which is the nearest property, is owned by a family member. It's farm diversification. With regard to the manure management, I suspect it's probably spread on the land that they own in any case. And if you cover it, it doesn't do anything because the leakage goes into the ground. So a cover's not going to help on manure, really. And frankly, I think, we should be supporting this as a diversification, and it's such low impact. I've got no problem, so I'm happy to propose approval, subject to what the officers want to do.
Yeah, right, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Cleary first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to second this. At the risk of repeating Councillor Goodrick's comments or our officer's excellent report, I think we also look at the reason for it coming in front of us, not only because of the size of it, but because it was from an informant from well without, I gather, from well without the area. There have been no local objections. I doubt many local people know what's about this. It is retrospective, but it's been an organic sort of development over the years from existing use into something that is already supported by our policy and local land use, or rural land use, should I say. Just going onto the lighting, yes, I would like to follow Niamh, if you could follow it up, because although it is some distance from neighbouring residential properties, it is a flat area, and there could well be distant views from the neighbouring A, O and B. And I'm sure the applicant, I would like to think the applicant would be very amenable to making sure that the lighting is directed downwards, not outwards. So other than that, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Was that a second?
I started out by saying I'm seconding.
Right. Yeah, I thought you had. Right, Councillor Dockerer.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same as Michael said. I mean, I drive past the entrance to this site regularly. I was totally unaware until I read this that there'd been any, it's just naturally happened, I think, and it's the next generation of a family using the land in another way to the way the father did, and I think, we should support this and make sure that it goes through.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? No, I just have a brief comment in that I went past the site only a few days ago and looked with intent, and it is so remote, it's so far away from anywhere. There's only really a problem with manure if it's close to a water course and therefore running in. So yeah, no problems with this. Moved, seconded, we'll go to the vote. Yeah, I think that's quite reasonable. Right, that was unanimous. Right, let's have a look. Well, in that case, should we move to item 11? No, but I'm looking at who we have speakers on, so that's a pretty good indication. We'll move to item 11, which is on page 204. Sorry. Oh, I missed that. Right, we're on item 10, back to 10 because we have a speaker on that one, so we are going in order. So all we did was hold things up a little bit there. Right, item 10, 177. Off we go.
Thank you. If we could just go to the map, please, that would be great. Yes, so the application site relates to an area of open garden land located to the north of Fir Tree Farm, which is a dwelling located to the east of Main Street in Wombleton. Also under the same ownership are the properties of Fir Tree Cottage, which is attached to Fir Tree Farm, and Fir Tree Court located to the south. As you can see, the site's directly adjoined by other residential properties to the east, together with Rockery Cottage to the north. Other residential properties are also present to the west of Main Street. Along the principal western boundary of the site, there's a low stone wall with another low brick retaining wall inset. It's noted, and we'll be able to appreciate this from the photographs in a moment, that the land levels rise quite significantly from the highway to the application site. The main section of the site is open presently along the southern boundary, and along the northern and eastern boundaries are a mix of walling and landscaping. The site's located within the village development limits and also the village conservation area. So the application seeks approval for the erection of a 3-bedroom dwelling house with associated parking. The property will be orientated with its principal elevation facing westwards, which really is in line with the prevailing pattern of development. The positioning of the dwelling will be commensurate with the principal building lines of Fir Tree Farm, Fir Tree Cottage and Rockery Cottage. The dwelling would incorporate a pitched roof design and would include eaves height of 5 metres with a ridge height of 7.8 metres with a single-storey element to the rear. It would be constructed of stone to the main principal western elevation with the use of render on the remaining elevations, also completed with pantals and a timber frame porch. The property would incorporate private amenity space to the rear east, and a new boundary treatment would be proposed to the eastern and southern boundaries to allow for private amenity spaces. The design and access statement confirms that the shared parking area to the rear of the site would provide 2 spaces for each the new dwelling, Fir Tree Farm and Fir Tree Cottage, and access will be taken via the existing access between Fir Tree Cottage and West Dean. It's noted that EV charging points would be proposed in this location where the parking is, and that the existing wall and hedge which form the eastern boundary will be retained. Within the red line, the access to the highway from this shared parking area is indicated, and the red line's been updated during the consultation period to include a section of existing walling to the front of Fir Tree Cottage that will be reduced in scale to allow for better visibility. This has been fully re-advertised. So just go into the photographs now. The first photograph is just the main view of the site and the infill plot between the 2 properties there. The next photo that shows the property to the north, which is Rockery Cottage. And the next photograph shows Rockery Cottage in the kind of near side and then Fir Tree Farm on the other side. And it's at this point you can appreciate the levels on the site. The next one is just another view of this really. And the next one is actually showing the access where the existing vehicular access for these properties is. You can see that the wall that's been mentioned is just the near curved one, and that is proposed to be lowered and a no planting zone included. So that's also within the overall ownership of the site, and that affords them the ability to be able to do that. The next photograph is just looking towards the access. I should have said the previous one, I had to take it from Google because I realized I didn't have a particular view, and I do have a lot with somebody in them, but I've blurred them out for privacy. But you can see actually since the Google image, the site's been, the access has been improved in terms of its surfacing. So the next photograph is just looking to the south and the visibility displays that are available at that point. The next photograph is actually from within the access. So just at the very front there is Fir Tree Court and the other 2 residential properties to the left-hand side of the photograph. The next one is just kind of panning around to where the access for Fir Tree Farm is currently terminating with a parking area. And the next photograph will show this a little bit better. So at that point, you are seeing the well-established hedge on the eastern rear boundary of the site. And the next photograph will show this a little bit better. So this will be extended and it's where the EV charging points will be located. The next one is looking towards the sort of northern boundary of the site. And I would just note that apple tree does have to be removed. There has been justification provided for that, which we'll discuss in a moment. The next photograph is just looking towards the western part of the site, kind of the natural infill area. And the next one is looking at the northern boundary and the northern elevation of Fir Tree Farm, which is to the south of the proposed dwelling. I think that's it for the photographs. So if you could just head back to the map. In terms of principle, Wombleton is considered to form an other village, and in other villages, infill development is supported subject to the local needs occupancy condition. The agent has submitted additional information to indicate how this proposal would serve local need through the submission of a letter from a local lettings agent. It's therefore considered that this proposal is in accordance with the requirements of policy SP1 and SP2, subject to the imposition of that local needs occupancy condition. Then in terms of character, form and impact upon the conservation area, the site is located within Wombleton Conservation Area, and that's where the local planning authority have a duty to ensure that any proposals maintain or enhance the character. As noted, the property will be orientated with its principal elevation facing westwards in line with the surrounding pattern of development on Main Street. The positioning of the proposed dwelling will be commensurate with the principal building lines of surrounding dwellings. It's considered that the proposed dwelling would incorporate a traditional form and scale with a pitched roof and gable end chimney stack. The surrounding area is characterised by single and two-storey dwellings, and it's not considered it would appear visually incongruous. The property will be rendered to the remaining elevations, so the principal would be made of stone and the others would be render. This sort of approach is apparent on many other properties nearby, and materials conditions would be recommended. Upon the request of the council's building conservation officer, a street scene drawing was submitted, and that's on page 195 of the agenda. And that's to illustrate the proposed street scene levels together with Fir Tree Farm and Fir Tree Cottage. It indicates the rise in land levels at the wider site, but confirms that the new build would have a ridge height approximately a metre higher than Fir Tree Farm to the south. That's not considered unacceptable, and this plan will be conditioned for compliance. The Building Conservation Officer confirmed no objection in a further response. In terms of landscaping, the existing apple tree on the site would be removed to facilitate the scheme. It's been reviewed with the council's tree and landscape officer, who's confirmed that they've no objections, subject to the imposition of a landscaping condition which has been recommended. The neighbouring concerns with regard to the siting of the EV charging points and their proximity to the hedgerow to the eastern elevation and a very kind of historic wall behind that hedge is noted. In design terms, it's not considered that these would have any impact on the wider character of the site due to their positioning, but it is considered appropriate to seek further details of their form and precise siting before installation. The agents agreed to that, and also to a condition to seek hedge protection fencing during the build to limit potential impacts upon that hedge. Therefore, by virtue of the appropriate scale and nature of the proposed development, together with the conditions, it's not considered that this would result in any harm to the conservation area. But as it is a sensitive village location, a condition will be attached to seek details of domestic lighting prior to occupation of the dwelling. In terms of residential amenity, as detailed, it's not considered that neighbouring properties would experience materially harmful overshadowing or loss of privacy. Concern has been raised in relation to the parking of contractors and storage of materials on the constrained site during the build phase, in case there's an overspill onto the main road. Highways have recommended a construction management condition which would require their agreement on the proposed measures, and it would also include an hours of operation condition, and that will hopefully ensure that there be no materially harmful impacts on neighbouring amenity or the tourist business operated from Rockery Cottage beyond the construction phase, nor would the laying of cable to the electric charging points relate to unacceptable disturbance in our view. In terms of access and highway safety, the proposed scheme would incorporate the continued use of the existing vehicular access teching that we've just had a look at. It presently serves Fir Tree Farm, Fir Tree Cottage and Fir Tree Court, but at this point it will also serve the single additional property. The scheme would incorporate 2 parking spaces for each of those 3 properties. Fir Tree Court has its own parking available. Following detailed negotiation, formal revised plans were submitted, including the street scene elevation, which indicates the wall reduction that were needed forward of Fir Tree Cottage, and the no planting zone to ensure the visibility displays to the north. These were fully re-advertised, and in their final consultation response, Highways confirmed that those arrangements are considered acceptable overall. Relevant highway conditions were recommended, one securing improvements to the wall to get the visibility, and the other, which I've noted, is a construction management plan. Therefore, in terms of a conclusion, for the reasons outlined above, officers are recommending approval of the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Niamh. Any questions? Councillor Thackeray.
One of my favourite subjects, the local needs occupancy condition, which I think we as a local plan working party have recommended be deleted when it goes forwards to North Yorkshire, which seems a great shame to encumber a property this close to the demise of Rydale and have all the problems to deal with. But the one thing I would like to point out, and I think the applicant should be made aware of, and the officer will clarify, that if the applicant were in future to submit an application for dual use holiday accommodation and residential letting accommodation, this council is amenable to such applications. Could you clarify that, please?
At this moment in time, it's being proposed as a residential dwelling. The agent and by extension, the applicant are content to have the local needs occupancy condition on it. And that would preclude it from being a holiday let at this point in time. Beyond that, if there is a change that's sought, we will consider it, but we'd need an application to be able to do so. We'd consult locally, we'd consult highways. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on that at this time.
The answer is yes, it would be possible for that person to seek approval and be granted
It
approval.
would be possible, yeah.
It would be possible.
But there would be an application and a process.
Indeed, there would. Indeed, there would. But I would make it noting for the benefit of the applicant that this council has approved multiple applications for dual use holiday accommodation and residential with a local needs occupancy condition on. One of the reasons being that people can't do anything with the local needs occupancy condition. I'd like to propose that there is a note put on there, say come back, and we'll lead you through it.
I think the agent's in the room, so I'm sure he has note of that. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Goodrick.
Chair, we're not being asked to consider that even. We're being asked to consider a dwelling with a local needs occupancy clause for residential use. No one's mentioned holiday accommodation. It's a fixation.
No, sorry, Councillor Goodrick. I mentioned holiday accommodation perfectly legitimately.
Can we carry
For
on,
the benefit
please?
of the
Any more questions? No more questions? Right. In that case, we have one speaker on this item, which is the agent, Mr. Paul Smith. I think you know the routine. Press the button, 3 minutes, warning after half a minute.
How's that? Clock ticking? Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to speak this evening. Very grateful. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers concerned. You may or may not know from the application package that we've been at this about 18, 19 months from the beginning. And as an agent, it's nice when you're working with an officer and an applicant who are prepared to negotiate, and the scheme has changed quite radically from where we started 18 months ago to something that we've now got officer support for, and hopefully we'll be able to approve this evening. It now complies with planning policy, both nationally and local, we think. And it's worth just commenting on the local occupancy clause. All the conditions that are outlined in the officer's report we're more than happy with. And the local occupancy clause doesn't really pose the applicant a problem, as the property is due to be rented out, all being well. And as you'll have seen from the accompanying information that comes from Bulmer's local letting agent, these properties are in high demand. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is in any way affordable housing, but all of the rental units that the applicant owns that are on the site charge between 25 and 30% below the market rate. So the applicant has been able to attract local people into local properties, which they keep there for a long time. While we're on the subject of local people, all of the tradespeople that have been collected by the applicant over the years that they've been dealing with rental property in the pub in Wimbledon would be used both to maintain the existing buildings and to build the new one. And with that in mind, given the CDM regulations, which is a committee I'm sure you're all familiar with, the applicant in this instance would then act as principal contractor, which allows us to use small to medium-sized local firms from plasterers, bricklayers, painters, decorators, gardeners, etc., to actually physically do the work. And with our support and the support of other professionals, they can fulfil that role. So really, I won't waste any more of your time. I just want to thank the officers again for putting it forward for approval. We'd like to spend the next 12 months focusing on the build rather than the appeal. So I hope that as members you can support the application. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. And I think we've all noted that resounding support for Niamh and what she's been doing. Very much appreciated. Right, we will then go to debate. Is this your patch, Snowy? No? Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I have absolutely no problem with this. I know the village very well. I think it'll fit in fairly well, and I'll just move approval, save time.
Right, we've got a proposal and a seconder. Would anybody else like to speak? No. In that case, we'll go to the vote. That again is unanimous. So we are on to item 11 on page 204. Right, I'm just being informed that we need a vote to extend the meeting because we're up to 3.5 hours. So I propose that we do. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Cleary seconded it. So we're finished. Right. Well, no, well, I was aware that we've always continued in the past, but we've just got a message from our legal representative to say that we do. So
I think if we're being advised to do that, it would be silly not to take that advice.
yeah, that's what I decided. So is it proposed and seconded? We'll go to the vote. Right, we've got 1 against, 1 abstention, and the rest are for it. So we're carrying on till the bitter end. Right, crack on.
Thank you. If we can just go to the map, please. So the application site relates to a parcel of land that includes the detached residential property of Middleton House, its domestic curtilage, and an area of what appears to be open grass paddock located to the north of Finkel Street in Sheriff Hutton. Apparently, this was the site of a historic brewery. The southern half of the site is relatively flat in form, whereas the land rises to the northern half of the site. It extends to 0.28 hectares in total and lies within the development limits of Sheriff Hutton. The site is adjoined by 3 residential properties. These include Cherry Tree Cottage to the north, Coney Garth to the east, and Meadowcroft to the west. There's also properties located to the south beyond the highway on Finkel Street. At this point, I would just highlight that there's an adjoining paddock to the west, which is outside of the application site, that has a live planning permission that's not yet been implemented for 2 dwellings, approved by Planning Committee under an application in 2019. The site doesn't lie within the village conservation area nor a VIUA. The conservation area boundary actually runs to the rear of the properties to the south of Finkel Street. Middleton House is presently accessed via vehicular access from Finkel Street to the south, and the paddock incorporates a field access from Finkel Street as well, close to the boundary of Coney Garth. The application seeks permission for the erection of a rear 2-storey extension together with a new entrance door and a canopy for Middleton House, and the erection of 2 4-bedroom properties and 1 5-bedroom property with detached garages, 1 attached garage, parking and landscaping. The precise details of all the 3 new dwellings, the garages and the extension to Middleton House are outlined in the officer's report. I'll just briefly note plot 3 is located directly to the north of Middleton House along the western boundary. It's a 2-storey, 4-bedroom dwelling that now incorporates an attached garage. Plot 4 is located to the northernmost part of the site and is a 2-storey, 5-bedroom dwelling with a detached garage with a playroom / office above, which is accessed via an external staircase. Both of these are orientated with the principal elevation facing southwards. Plot number 2 is the remaining plot, and that's located to the southeastern part of the site. This again proposes a 4-bedroom, 2-storey dwelling and a single garage. The 3 properties will be completed predominantly with brickwork, red concrete roof tiles, slide and sash windows, with some smaller sections of contrast and black timber cladding. Specifically relating to plot 2, it's been identified within the incoming representations that the occupier of the neighbouring property at Coney Garth hold a right of access over this part of the site. The agents made amendments attempting to accommodate this, and instead of a double garage, it's a single garage and an existing access is retained. The agent has made these amendments and it's been re-advertised, and no further response has been received by the occupier of Coney Garth to date. As noted, the 4 properties will be served via a new access from Finkel Street, with the existing access serving Middleton House closed off. It would incorporate a width that would allow 2 cars to pass, and the access road would provide access to the individual properties internally. The existing planting and wall along the southern boundary of the site will be removed, and a low-level 600 mm high wall provided to ensure the visibility displays for the accesses could be met. Internally at the site, there have been extensive use of hedging with more limited hard boundary treatments to serve the dwellings. Additional plantings also proposed, and some trees were lawfully removed prior to the application being submitted. A bin store is also proposed for use on bin day close to the access for the temporary holding of bins. The overall site layout indicates this scheme would incorporate the installation of a new pavement forward of the site along Finkel Street, from which pedestrian accesses to Middleton House and plot 2 are proposed. There's also internal pavement within the cul-de-sac. Currently along this point in front of Middleton House and along Finkel Street, it's only a grass verge with no pavement. So just turning to the photographs. The first photograph is looking towards Middleton House to the right-hand side, and the property of Meadowcroft is located to the left-hand side. The next photograph is again looking at Middleton House, but looking southwest along Finkel Street. The next one is looking at Middleton House, its existing access, and the hedgerow in front of the paddock that's present at the moment. The next one shows the existing field access and the access where occupiers of Coney Garth, you just see their driveway at the right-hand side, can attain the right of access. The next one is looking northeasterly up towards the crossroads along Finkel Street. And the next one is within the site at the eastern boundary, looking kind of southwest, and you can see the extent of Middleton House at that point. The next photograph is looking at the western elevation of Middleton House as it currently is. It's a little bit overgrown at present. The next one is within the site looking towards the northeast. You can note that Coney Garth is there kind of at the higher level. And you can also note the little bit of internal hedging at the site, and that is where the property at the north will be located. The next one is again looking towards the north of the site. So the plots 3 and 4 will be located here, one towards the western boundary and one along the northern boundary. And the next one is kind of from the same point, but looking eastwards. And this is where plot 2 that has the pedestrian access onto Finkel Street will be located. The next one is looking from within the site, looking at the southern boundary towards Finkel Street. The next one is just another view of this point, but just noting the existing hedging at the site, which is kind of well established and well maintained. And the next one is just looking towards the western boundary. Again, you can see the existing hedges that are intended to be retained along the western boundary. The next one is looking from the eastern boundary of the site northwards, you're seeing Coney Garth, that little area where the access can be taken from occupiers of Coney Garth northwards. And the next one is looking towards the northern part of the site. And this is roughly where the garage associated with the most northerly plot will be located. And this next one is approximately where the house will be located. The next photograph is looking towards the western boundary of the site, again at those mature hedgerows. And if there's another photograph, it's just another view of that. So if we could just go back to the map. In terms of the principle of the development, Sheriff Hutton is allocated as a service village. And within service villages, the conversion and redevelopment of previously developed land and buildings and the subdivision of existing dwellings and infill development is accounted for and allowed and permissible. Whilst the entirety of the 3 new plots don't potentially kind of represent as traditional infill, it does have a direct access to Finkel Street, and it would mirror the form of development previously approved under the 2019 application. And also elsewhere in the village, you can kind of see from that point there's Castleside to the west, which itself is a cul-de-sac, and the buildings would be very much surrounded by other residential properties. It's also noted that each of the properties would have direct access, and historic mapping also indicates that this site has previously been developed, although it maintains an open, kind of verdant appearance at the moment. It's noted that the consultation responses from the parish council and the occupiers of neighbouring property indicate in their view that the village is in need of smaller properties for young families and downsizing older households. This is acknowledged and appreciated, but it can't form a material reason for refusal for an application for larger properties in planning terms. It's therefore considered that there's no significant conflict with the requirements of policies SP1 and SP2. In terms of character and form, the layout is considered to be of an appropriately low density and wouldn't result in overdevelopment of the site. There's sufficient space around the dwellings with private amenity spaces of an appropriate scale. It's considered the scale of the individual dwellings are acceptable, with plot 2, which is the one closest to the road, incorporating the highest proportions. However, it's commensurate with the vertical proportions of Middleton House itself and is located at a similar distance from the highway. It is, however, considered necessary to seek a condition to secure details of existing or proposed land levels within the site to ensure that the dwellings assimilate well. In principle, the materials are considered acceptable and represent a cohesive design strategy, including Middleton House. We will seek samples of those materials. Improvements to the originally proposed landscaping scheme were sought by the Tree and Landscape Officer, and in their most recent response, that officer was satisfied. There will be a condition to seek adherence to the landscaping scheme and the tree protection plan that's been put forward. There will be also a condition to seek details of all proposed boundary treatments within the site, including a sample of the low-level wall to the front prior to its installation. There will also be a condition to seek details of any domestic lighting. It's not always requested, but given the site's currently unlit, it's considered reasonable. It's also considered appropriate to remove householder permitted development rights to ensure an acceptable appearance and level of a neighbouring amenity in the future. So subject to those conditions, it's considered that it wouldn't be detrimental to the site or the wider character of Sheriff Hutton. In terms of the impact upon heritage assets, as detailed in the report, we've fully considered this in relation to the surrounding assets. It's concluded that, subject to the recommended archaeological condition, it wouldn't have any adverse impact upon heritage assets nor their settings. And because of the archaeological conditions, suitable provision for archaeological mitigation has been made. In terms of the residential amenity, that's been considered in detail in the officer's report, so I won't repeat that, but it's not considered that there would be any harm to neighbouring occupiers. An appropriate level of amenity will be retained for neighbouring properties and those within the plot themselves. There were various alterations made within the determination period, and those have been indicated in the report. Conditions have been recommended to ensure that where appropriate on the 3 new houses, no further first floor level openings can be installed, and a construction management plan is conditioned to secure on-site parking for construction vehicles and hours of work and to limit impacts on neighbouring properties. In terms of access and highway safety, North Yorkshire Highways have been involved in negotiations throughout the determination period, and things that they requested included swept path information, visibility display information, the setting back of the access further than originally proposed, and the removal of the originally proposed replacement hedgerow to secure the visibility displays. And in their final consultation response, Highways have confirmed the scheme is acceptable. Therefore, whilst there have been concerns locally raised about the suitability of the access, it's considered that this can be safely upgraded and is suitable for the level of dwellings proposed. Therefore, it's considered to be in accordance with the relevant policy. In terms of ecology, appropriate reports were submitted in support of this application, and the NYCC ecologist considered these and recommended specific conditions to secure adherence to the measures put forward. The agent, as noted in the report, has indicated that they are willing to provide a financial sum to Rydal District Council to offset a calculated biodiversity net gain lost, which is very strongly welcomed. It's noted that the requirement to provide financial contributions is not as yet a legal requirement. So on that basis, we don't have an identified mechanism just yet to collect funding relating to this, but I have been exploring different avenues, liaising with other teams internally at the council, NYCC, Ecology and the A1B, and it's considered that we can get that mechanism in place and secure this money for funding applications related to ecological improvements within Sheriff Hutton and the surrounding parishes. So consequently, members are requested to support this approach of delegation to officers to secure that. In terms of drainage, it's noted that the proposed connection to the main sewers is proposed for surface water and foul waste, and there are separate sewers in Sheriff Hutton. We've consulted the IDB and Yorkshire Water. There's been a lot of detailed drainage information as part of this scheme, and further information was received following a review by the IDV. Testing for soakways was undertaken, but the site didn't pass the tests. Consequently, that's why the surface water is intended to drain into the main public surface water sewer, which is believed to be how the site currently drains. The IDB would only agree a lower level of discharge through the use of a hydrobreak and on-site storage, but they have recommended a condition. And this will require further details at that time. So they are satisfied subject to the condition. But I would note Yorkshire Water had also recommended a condition in their original consultation response, and they'd recommended that separate systems were installed, which is fine, that can be done, but that the rate of discharge should be no greater than 3.5 litres per second, which the IDB wished to see lower. Yorkshire Water were consulted again on the 23rd of August as there was updated drainage information, but no further response was received. So in light of this, for the avoidance of any doubt, I've been consulting with Yorkshire Water further, and it appears they did not receive this consultation response, although other parties on the same day did receive it. So it might be something for us just to check out in terms of our systems. They have been asked to review this again as a matter of urgency. However, it appears likely they'll continue to recommend the condition with the maximum of 3.5 litres per second. The Yorkshire Water officer I spoke to noted informally that they own the surface water sewer, and if the IDB would like to see lower rates, they should be liaising with them directly. But fundamentally, both drainage bodies recommend approval of the scheme subject to conditions. So officers are going to hopefully wait the final response from Yorkshire Water and then consider what conditions to apply at that stage. So delegation to officers is sought to deal with this point because we can deal with this appropriately. So overall, I would just note that there has been an update to the contamination conditions. The detail has been provided to members on their desks, and to conclude, members are asked to delegate the decision to officers. Officers conclude that the application is considered to be acceptable in principle in terms of scale, form, materials, and subject to the conditions on levels and boundary treatments, landscaping, material samples, and lighting. It's not considered that this would be harmfully impactful on either the site itself or the wider character of Sheriff Hutton. Thank you.
Thank you, Niamh. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going to page 223, and we've got condition 22. It says details of site working hours. Can I make a request that we limit the site working hours to not Saturday afternoons and Sundays? I think that's a reasonable request for the local community not to be disturbed on Sundays and Saturday afternoons. I
I
think.
think that's absolutely fine. We'll probably seek to get bank holidays in there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
indeed.
thank you.
Yeah, if that could, it doesn't say anything, so I want it to say not those times.
You can put that as an informative just under that we'll expect that is what's put forward.
Maybe not before 7 in the morning and
I think
finish by 6 at night.
I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right,
Chair.
thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thanks, Chair. Biodiversity net gain. Obviously, the legislation on that has been stalled with all the changes at various ministries and everything else in the past few. So I did ask this question last week to the officers saying, what do we do about biodiversity policy, climate policy? I'd be interested. This is more of a question of interest in how this is going to be worked out. And I know the Dasgupta report has set out some recommendations on this, but I'd be interested in how we approach this and what we put down in this to use that as guidance of what we can bring into the local plan. So this is more a personal question, is can you keep me informed about what the decision is on this biodiversity net gain? Because I think this is crucial to what we're trying to bring forward in our local plan discussion. And for me, for North Yorkshire as well.
That was a yes. Councillor Andrews.
Sorry to be awkward, but I'm not quite. I've got the plan of that part of Sheriff Hutton, but I can't work out where in the general pattern of Sheriff Hutton that is. Yeah. No, I know where the site is on the plan. But what I can't find it, what I can't work out is. Oh, I see. All right. I understand. I do understand now. Yeah.
Right, okay, Councillor Thackeray.
That was
Not too long about Yorkshire Water, thank you.
No, I'm leaving that for Councillor Mason when he.
I'm not going to go there.
You're not going to go
I'll
there.
let you do it.
Oh, okay. Can I borrow your little machine then? Councillor Mason has a hotline to the Rivers Trust, which tells you how many times Yorkshire Water's thrown sewage into the river. And on this occasion, it says in 2021, this sewer storm overflow spilled 26 times for a total of 442 hours, discharging into the Howell Beck. And I'll now read you the comedy script from Yorkshire Water. The reason the water company provided as to why event duration monitors may have provided information for less than 90% of the relevant return period was sensor failure. Thank you.
It's a question. I don't think that was
what
quite
was
a
the
question? Was
question?
it?
Yes.
Why?
No, the question was to the officer. You wrote to Yorkshire Water in August, did you say?
Yeah, but from speaking with the relevant officer today, he maintains that wasn't received. I can see on
Oh.
our system it's maybe just one of those things. We'll have a chat about it internally and see. But it looks as if
So we
it
just
was
ignore them.
done.
But there is a very interesting question as to why there is always a requirement on planning conditions for separate systems of drainage for foul and surface water. Because it comes to pass that if you can't get your soak away to drain, Yorkshire Water has to take your water. So end of story. Rather a
think-
stupid anomaly, isn't it?
Yeah, I think on this site there are separate sewers for surface water and foul water. So
No,
yeah.
Indeed, but just as a point of fact, it just is a ludicrous situation. Thank you.
Right, I think we'll move on from the abject failures of Yorkshire Water. I think. You got another question? Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, obviously there's concern on the corner here for access and traffic. Has Highways looked at the speed control on this? And I'm kind of a supporter of the 20 is plenty, whether this is actually a good case for a 20 zone in that part of the village, particularly with the village hall there on Sundays with the kids' football there. It's quite a blind corner, and people don't necessarily fly around that village, but they're not really sticking to the 30 either. So I just wonder what has been done on that highways, if I haven't looked at the speed limit. Literally just from maybe the junction round past the village hall.
I mean, I can't comment on whether highways have looked at
Okay.
reducing the speed limit,
Doesn't
but I
have to be
know
a
that
depth.
for this application, they're
Okay.
satisfied that the visibility is okay and the access is
Thank
safe.
you. Right, are we done for questions? Yes, right, we have one speaker on this, which is the agent, Mr. Richard Mowat or Mowat. Right. I think you know the routine now. 3 minutes, half a minute, I'll give you a warning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Richard Mowat and I act as agent on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Gibson, for this application. I would like to thank officers for their assistance in progressing this application to committee. The officer's report is very detailed and is clear that all material matters raised by technical officers have been addressed and resolved in a comprehensive and timely manner. The committee report carefully considers the principle of development, character, form and landscaping, impact upon heritage assets and their setting, residential amenity, access and highway safety, ecology and drainage, and concludes in each instance that the proposals accord with all relevant local and national planning policies. There are no outstanding objections and consequently it has been determined that the development of 3-number dwellings and the redevelopment proposals to Middleton House will not give rise to any adverse harm that cannot be mitigated through suitable design or the agreed conditions. Consequently, we clearly support the recommendation for members to approve the application and to delegate the final wording of conditions to officers. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mowat. Right, that's that. We move into debate and I think it's Eric's bit, but do you want to do it, Janet, or do you want to go with it?
Well,
It's
I'm
my
not really
division.
too familiar with this, Caroline.
My division.
Lives down
Um,
there.
You know, looking at this application, and certainly the parish council are not supportive of it. And I take on board what Councillor Mason's concerns about the speed on that road and the fact that it's on that corner and it's also near the village hall where there is a lot of traffic going in and out. However, they do have 30-mile-an-hour VAS signs now in the village. So it is a visual prompt to remind drivers, and I think it has helped. There is a 20's Plenty scheme, which is up further up Castleside around the school. So looking at all the information, and it's always a balance. The balance is I really can't find enough to say no. And so on the basis that I can't find enough to say no, I'm going to move approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak or second it? Yes, Councillor Dockery.
I'll second it.
Right, anybody else wanting to speak on this one? My only fairly short comment is that thinking about the gradient of the slope and the amount of development, it certainly needs those proper looking at the attenuation on the site. So given that we've got a proposer and a seconder, we'll go to the vote and bear in mind that this is conditional approval as on page 218, which is delegated to officers about the biodiversity net gain agreement and the updated drainage and contamination conditions. Yeah, it seems we've got a bit of a glitch there. We'll go for try the vote again. Oh no. Is it working at all? Oh, no. Right. Councillor Dockery. Right, we therefore have 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8 for and 1 abstention.
Chair, I'm going to have to go.
Okay. Right. Well, the good news is we can skip one because we've already done it. And we're on to item 13 on page 347. Right, okay, Lucy, go ahead.
Lovely, thank you. So this application has been brought to committee for determination following receipt of comments objecting to the application from the neighbouring properties to the east of the application site. These comments are detailed and considered in full within the officer report, but in summary, the comments relate to the concerns of loss of light and potential overbearing effects in relation to the ridge height and the proximity of the development to the eastern boundary. Whilst the extension may result in a slight reduction in light as a result of the increase in ridge height, it is not considered that it would materially or significantly be materially or significantly greater than what is currently experienced. It should also be mentioned that following receipt of these objection comments, the scheme was revised to remove the gable end to the eastern elevation to mitigate any potential overbearing or overshadowing issues. Following a reconsultation, the neighbouring properties still had concerns in relation to the height of the ridge. There are a few updates to the officer report. The first is that further comments from 2 Cockgarth have been received following a recent site visit, echoing the overbearing concerns due to the height of the ridge. These comments can be viewed in the late pages. The second amendment is that an additional condition will also be recommended with approval to restrict openings, including any windows or doors on the eastern elevation. And then just lastly, to clarify, the development is proposed to provide accommodation for the elderly applicant's family members due to increased care needs. If we could just go to the first picture. Thanks. So this is an aerial view of the site in relation to the village of Setrington, with the application site highlighted with a yellow marker. Next photo, thank you. This is another aerial view of the site with the application site outlined in red and the proposed extension outlined in blue. The objectors live at the properties to the east, which are outlined in yellow on the map. So this photo just shows the front of the property with the existing garage to the right. So this is just a clearer image of the existing garage. So this image shows the boundary fence to the east in relation to the objecting properties, which just could be seen over the fence there. Next photo, thank you. So this image shows the existing garage from the rear garden of Thorn Cottage. The objector's property 2 Cockgarth can be seen in the foreground. Next photo. So this photo shows a view from the rear of Wold View. You can see the existing garage at Thorn Cottage on the far right. Next photo. So this photo shows a closer view of the existing garage and gable end of Thorn Cottage from Wold View. So this image shows the existing garage from the rear garden of 2 Cockgarth. Next photo. And this last photo shows a view looking west at the east elevation of Thorn Cottage from the rear garden of 2 Cockgarth. That should be the end now. So the recommendation is one of approval for the reasons outlined in the officer's report. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Lucy. Do we have any questions on this one? I see no hands. I have no speakers. This is yours, Michael, I believe.
It is, Mr. Chairman. Yes. I think one of the thank you, Lucy, for the report. I think can we just go to the part of the report on here where it refers to the fact that in fact this is only just over what somebody could do without any planning consent. Can you hear me? All right. Yeah. I don't really need the microphone, but I'll press on. This is for the recording, members. Yeah. Just to recap, this is only just bigger than what could be built without planning consent, and so I won't add anything to the report other than to propose to move approval as per the recommendation.
Yeah, I had a couple of seconds, but Councillor Mason, yeah, anybody else? Yeah, my only comment is that this appears to be quite a fair compromise following the initial objections to the height and size. So I see no reason at all and see no problem at all. So we'll go to the vote. From what's left, that's unanimous. Right, so we'll move on to item 14. And poor Alan, who's been sitting there trying to keep awake all night, off you go. It is, and I think we're going to take items 14 and 15 together.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yep, so the two applications relate to an application for planning permission and an application for listed building consent, and obviously they relate to the same redundant chapel, and the proposal is for conversion to a 2-bedroom dwelling. Updates to the published report, the Parish Council have responded, and their response, which is objection, has been circulated with the late pages for the two applications. As explained in the proposal section of the reports, the applications are resubmissions following withdrawal of earlier schemes, and the proposal in front of members is considered to be a much improved scheme compared to the earlier applications. So I'll just move on to the photos within the presentation, please. So first of all, we have the aerial photo. The chapel is highlighted as the application site. The application site is the footprint of the chapel and nothing more. I've highlighted the neighbouring residential properties from which we've had objections. So to the rear of the chapel, there's one chapel close, which is approximately 6 metres from the rear elevation of the chapel. And across the other side of Main Street is Glebe Cottage and also May Farm, who've raised concerns with the proposal. The chapel is within development limits of the service village. It's grade 2 listed, and it has been redundant and not used for worship for quite a long period of time. So moving on to the next photo, this is a photo of the front north elevation. You can see the windows have been boarded up, and it's actually in quite a dilapidated condition. Also shown in the photo is number 1 chapel close to the rear of the chapel. Just to note, in terms of alterations that are proposed, the 3 windows on the front elevation would be retained and refurbished, and as would the front door. On the western elevation, which you can see on the side, that would remain as it is. All the brickwork would be repointed, and there would be general repairs to the building, as there would be repairs to the roof as well. As you can also see, there's quite a large grass verge to the front of the chapel, which is outside of the application site. So the next slide, please. Again, just showing the front elevation, but just turned around so you can see the eastern side elevation. And it's this elevation where there would be a new window inserted at first floor level. In terms of roof lights, there would be no roof lights on the front roof slope, but there would be 1 in either side and 2 at the rear roof slope. So moving on to the next picture, please. So this is facing westward along Main Street towards the eastern elevation of the chapel. On the left-hand side, you can see number 1 Chapel Close and its proximity to the rear of the chapel. And on the right-hand side, you can see Glebe Cottage, just appearing on the right, at the front of the pavement. Also in the background, you can actually see on-street parking that extends along the main street past the chapel. And moving on to the next slide, this is again showing the western elevation. This would be unchanged, but it just shows the proximity of the building. It's landlocked by adjacent land. In this case, on this side, it's the I suppose the front garden of number 1 Chapel Close, and also the access to the public highway that serves that dwelling. And the next slide, please. And this is facing outward from that driveway, serving number 1 Chapel Close, just showing the side of the chapel. And this is panning round, showing the rear of the chapel, the southern elevation. These windows will be reinstated. As you can see, they're currently boarded up, but these windows would be non-openable and they would be obscure glazed completely in terms of privacy and overlooking. And it's within that roof slope, there would be 2 roof lights, but that would serve the first floor landing. There's also drawings within the application that demonstrate that the roof lights would be above head height within that level. And again, this is just showing the distance from the rear elevation of the chapel to number 1 Chapel Close. So as you can see, it is a close relationship between the 2 buildings, and the chapel itself doesn't benefit from any curtilage. And just an example, I'm not sure how clear that is, but the building is clearly in need of some repairs. It hasn't been looked after for a period of time, so there is investment required in this case. And again, just to show one of the details that's referred to in the listing, the date stone above the doorway, which I think is 1847. And then I think the final slide is just within the chapel itself. As you can see, it's not in great condition. There is actually a suspended timber floor within the chapel, which would be removed, and that would allow the ground floor to be lowered. So that would involve the lowering of the existing floor by up to 1.3 metres. So between 1.3 metres and 400 mil to create that lower ground floor that would allow a first floor to be formed. So I think that's the final slide, but it might be worthwhile just returning to the aerial photo if possible. So yeah, the chapel is a listed building. The council has a statutory duty to have special regard for the preservation of listed buildings. It's considered the alterations are necessary to facilitate the conversion and do not detract from the special interest of the listed building. The proposal offers heritage benefits and would also contribute to the mix of housing available in Stakston, which is a service village. The proposal represents a long-term sustainable use of a heritage asset in compliance with primary legislation referenced in the officer report. The local concerns are noted and the scheme has been amended accordingly by the applicant. It's also recommended that several conditions are imposed to ensure no harm to living conditions of neighbours. To conclude, there are no objections from highways or the building conservation officers, and both applications, which is for planning permission and listed building consent, are recommended for conditional approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Questions? Yes, Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Given that it's got no curtilage and it's going straight onto the main road, how are we going to accommodate the construction traffic? Because there'll be a significant amount of construction traffic to bring that back into use. And it will block the road if we're not very careful.
In terms of construction, the highways officer has recommended a condition for a construction management scheme, which does require the applicant to make sure all materials are stored outside of the public highway. So given the building, it requires alterations and repairs, it would almost have to be worked so that anything stored would have to be stored within the building as they're working on the external part of the building. So it doesn't stop contractors from parking to drop off materials because it's a public highway. But I think given that there isn't any substantial extensions or demolition work, it's for the applicant to comply with that condition and work out accordingly.
Sorry, Alan, that wasn't my concern, because you can store inside the building a certain amount of stuff. It's where are the contractors going to park the vehicles? That's the biggest thing. I know that we can store inside the building, but where are they going to park the vehicles?
Yeah, I think it would have to be. I mean, that stretch of Main Street isn't restricted by double yellow lines, so it would have to be somewhere within the village that would have to accommodate the vehicles.
Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, it's very, very interesting that it's acceptable to park your vehicles anywhere on the road if you like, and it seems acceptable to the local planning authority on this in this instance. Can I just read what it says from Highways? And if you're not all falling asleep, this is one of the most surreal Highways responses I think I've ever read, and I would argue that it doesn't relate to the planning application in question. Policy SP20 advises that access to and movement within the site by vehicles, cycles and pedestrians would not have a detrimental impact on road safety, traffic movement or the safety of pedestrians and cyclists. Information will be required in terms of the positioning and treatment of, and here we go, accesses and circulation routes, including how these relate to surrounding footpaths and roads. Can anybody give me a clue as to how, presumably North Yorkshire Highways dreamt that up? I've never heard anything so nonsensical in all my life. It's madness. There is no access onto the site. There is no circulation onto the site, unless you want to have the wall of death and the motorbike inside it going around at full pelt. I think you'll need to cycle out there, Mike, and have a look and see if you can get your bike through a crack somewhere and circulate. I rest my case.
Right, any more questions? No, right, I have two speakers on this item, and first up is the objector, Mr. Peter Elwis. I think I don't need to describe the routine by now, do I?
A start, I would like to make comment that I hope you've all noted there was no photograph of the eastern end wall from the paddock. That is salient point. I represent the Stonehouse family who farm at May Farm and Glebe Cottage, and they own the paddock to the east. So that's very helpful. They object to the application on the following grounds. Obviously, the chapel is listed. It's only 70 metres square. The applicant's ownership is the footprint of the building, and it obviously imposes into their neighbour's property as well. So there's no outside space. The listing will be altered by a large picture window at the first floor level. If you look at your drawings, you should all have them, to the east elevation to bedroom 1. This, in our opinion, is not necessary, as the current windows, north-south, give light to this room. I don't know where they're going to put the bed, but anyway. In addition, the hip roof lights on either end of the building, bedroom 1 and 2, change the character of the building and are not necessary. The character of the building should not be altered under the listing status and remain within the same window and door openings. The proposed window on the east gives a view over the paddock, a lack of privacy to Mayview, and a visual which is described as a visual important area by the planning officer. We are concerned about underpinning. You've seen the cracks in the walls, etc. The applicant said that he can do it from the inside, but I do doubt that. I think some access will be required around the building. Stock protection of the building. Our client will obviously preserve the applicant's right to light, and you've heard about the light to the adjoining property, the befrosted glass, and will fence within a metre of the property to protect it from cattle and sheep. There is a fence there at the moment, but a bit rickety. This may include the provision of a close boarded fence to the eastern end, which is another reason for removing the window. He can fence up to about
30 seconds remaining.
Right. The property does not have outside space for cars, bin storage, and other facilities of modern living. In conclusion, our clients do not feel that the building is suitable for residential purposes, and the village confirms this with the parish council, and there is an element of doubt from the committee. If there is an element of doubt with this committee, a site visit should take place so that you actually get the feel of what we're talking about.
Right, could you wind up there, please?
Yeah. Well, that is the conclusion. I mean, the village street scene could well change with a bin store on the front, patio furniture, cars parked all over the place, and our clients who farm, along with 3 other farmers in the village, will have difficulty passing traffic on the road.
Right, thank you. Right. Right, okay, we now have the applicant, Claire Harvey. You have 3 minutes and I'll give you a warning at half a minute.
So good evening and thank you for giving me the time to speak on this. I'm Claire Harvey from S&H Quality Developments, and I'm here to ask for approval for our full planning application. We're a very small company and we specialise in converting old character buildings into much needed quality housing. There is just myself and my business partner, Alan. We bought the chapel 2 years ago. It's been empty for over 2 decades and is in a very poor state of repair, which has worsened whilst we've had it. It is an eyesore that detracts from the street scene and the surrounding area. It really is time that something was done with it before it degenerates even further. And in our opinion, conversion to residential is the best use due to its position in a mainly residential area of the village, and due to its proposed size, its occupancy will be self-limiting and will be no different to having any other nearby neighbours. We have observed at varying times the road through the village past the chapel. It is a very quiet road. The bypass at the top is very effective and there is really only a small amount of traffic flow at each time we've been there, mornings, evenings, weekends. Been there in the week, so we don't anticipate any problem with visibility or obstruction. We are a very small company. We don't have large construction vehicles. We have 1 flatbed and there may be 1 car, so there won't be lots and lots of construction vehicles around. We're a responsible developer and we do understand the concerns and objections that were put forward. We've worked with our architect in the planning department and taken all their advice and comments on board at all stages, and we have amended our plans to try and address our neighbours' objections and concerns as referenced in the planning officer's report, which is very comprehensive on each of those. We also accept that during the renovations phase there is always a little disruption, but we will work within the planning conditions to minimise these through our working hours and our building practices. It will be a relatively short space of time for a long-term gain of bringing this important building back into use. If completed, the building will be fully insulated. The glazing, while remaining in keeping with the character, will be repaired and double glazed to mitigate any sound transference. The building would be structurally sound. We can do the underpinning from the inside and pose no danger to public or adjacent property, which is not the situation at the moment. The outlook from the rear of the property would be improved and the whole property would enhance the street scene. Current plans meet all of the planning regulations. We are fully supportive of all the conditions set out and there are no objections from any of the statutory consultees and therefore we would ask for approval of the full plan. As a Grade 2 listed building, it's an important part of Stackson's village scene and history, and as owners, we are custodians of its heritage and have an obligation to preserve it. It is in desperate need of repair, but also needs to be something in order to be brought back to life and have a purpose in today's village. When restoring an old character or listed building, you have to be mindful of the need to preserve it and its historic fabric and the integrity of it, while striking a balance within bringing it into a more modern standards. We've taken the building conservation officer's advice on the type of windows and skylights, and we will fully comply with this. And as it runs alongside the full application, we would also like the committee to consider that the work needed to be done to maintain it would be much of the work needed to have change of use. And therefore, there will be hopefully some repair to be done, but it might as well have the change of use and have the internal work done at the same time. It needs to be repaired urgently, and therefore we would ask the committee to approve both applications, please.
Right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right, we don't have a local member. Does anybody want to start us off on this? Yes, Councillor Goodrich.
I'll start it because I've campaigned in this village quite extensively, and actually it's a lovely little building. And it's a great shame because it's listed and it is so nice that we would, if we don't do something with it, it will just disappear because it's not in a very good state of repair at all. I do have some concerns, but I'm hoping, given the owner's assurance that they can be mitigated and any kind of inconvenience can be kept to a minimum. So I'm not sure about the window. I'm not sure how much view it would give of May Farm. I'm not sure. Not sure about that window, but in the East End. Anyway, I'll move approve.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, I'm not terribly au fait with this site. Apparently, the village has been bypassed. I do have sympathy for Councillor Goodrick's proposal, and indeed for the application as a whole, because apparently there is a legal obligation to look after these buildings listed as they are. Again, as Councillor Goodrick says, not sure about this window, and I wonder whether a site visit might just inform us better as to, what we can't see from, an excellent report. But I just, again, forgive me, officers and members, when we talk about site meetings, I always generally say I've rarely been to a site visit where I don't learn something. And I just wonder whether we would be better informed if we could defer for a site visit. Can I therefore propose a site deferment for a site visit?
Happy for members to go and have a look. I know it well, but I'm very happy for members to go and have a look.
Right, in that case, it's been moved and seconded for a site visit. Would like? Yeah. Go to the vote then. This will be on the basis of both items 14 and 15. That is unanimous. So we will move on to item 16 on page 397, and I believe that is Ellie. 7, yes.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members, this is an application for the raising of the eaves and ridge height of the existing dwelling to allow the formation of first floor living accommodation, the installation of replacement windows and the erection of an oak framed porch to the front elevation. The application has been brought to Planning Committee for determination following receipt of objections from 2 properties, with the concerns relating to the design, impact on the conservation area, drainage and highways. The scheme has been revised since the original submission to address the concerns raised by the Building Conservation Officer, with the resulting scheme considered to reflect the form and character of properties within Flaxton. The proposed development would result in a significant change to the appearance of the dwelling. However, the neat double-fronted appearance is considered to result in a dwelling which is sensitive to the area in terms of the architectural details and materials. As a result of the amended design, the Building Conservation Officer has confirmed they have no objections and there are no objections from the local highway authority. If we can just go to the aerial view of the site, which shows the application site outlined in red, the 2 neighbouring properties annotated and the objector from the cottage also annotated. And this view should help members to appreciate the position of the dwelling on the site in relation to the position of the neighbouring dwellings. This shows the front elevation of the dwelling from the entrance gates, and the next photo pans round slightly to the neighbouring property to the south, and the next photo pans round to the property to the north. The next photo is taken at the side of the house and shows the relationship with the property to the south. And the next photo shows the relationship with the property to the north. The next photo is taken at the rear of the property. The existing flat roof extension will be retained but altered to a lean-to roof form. And the next photo is taken further down the garden to show the scale of the plot. This photo is taken opposite the dwelling to show the property's current position within the street scene. And the next photo pans round to the property to the north. And then the next photo is panning round to the south. The next photo is taken adjacent to Tyne Home, and this shows the relationship between the application site and both the neighbouring properties. The next photo is taken at the entrance of the site looking directly opposite, just to show the context of other properties within the street scene. And then the next 2 pictures are panning round to show the street scene immediately opposite. There are no updates to the officer report. The recommendation is one of approval, subject to the 5 conditions on page 402 of the agenda. Thank you.
Is that lightning speed? Appreciated by all, I think. Any questions? No, I see no questions. We do not have any speakers on this item. Who's the nearest one to this? I think it's Caroline. Yeah, off you go.
Thanks, Ellie. And I'm sorry, I am a bit conflicted about this because I'll let other members tell me what they.
Anybody want to speak? Come on, come on. We'll be here all night.
It doesn't look that complicated to me.
Would you care to move approval?
I need to study it a bit more.
Right, well, I'll start off then. I can't see anything about this that would require us to refuse permission, and therefore I'll move approval.
It just goes against the grain, really. We want kind of single story accommodation for our elderly people, and there we are putting another level on it. I'm just conflicted by it because I just think it's a loss of single story accommodation. But I suppose I could say
Councillor
yes.
Cleary.
Yeah, it's the art of the possible, and it's what is in front of us dealing with material planning matters. And it's the old thing, it's not what you'd like, but can you stop it? Can you actually say, no, I refuse it because you don't like it or you prefer something different? That's not the way we work, as you very well know. And so I'm going to, I think, did you prefer, then I will second it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, I would just say that even if it has a second floor on it, it still is a bungalow with a second floor on the top. No, I mean that seriously because let's say for the sake of argument that an elderly couple or a person live in this bungalow and they get to a stage where they need some live-in care and the roof space is the obvious place to go. I think it's a perfect solution. You know, granddad might not be sleeping in the same room as granny, or granny might be sleeping there and somebody, a relative might be coming into bedroom number 2 and the carer might be in number 3. I know it's elementary maths, but I think it adds up.
This is why I wanted other people.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm pleased that it's been helpful.
Right, on the basis that we have thousands of bungalows in the area with second stories on the top of them, it's been moved and seconded. We'll go to the vote. Right, that's eventually unanimous. Come on, get yourselves together. We're nearly there. Too much excitement. Right, we move on to item 17 on page 407, and it's back to Lucy again.
Hopefully it should be an easy one to skim through. It's very minor. So this application has been brought to committee for determination following receipt of comments objecting to the application from the neighbouring property to the south of the application site. These comments are detailed and considered full within the officer report, but in summary, the comments relate to the width of the drop curb and the concern that it may look unsightly. It was subsequently suggested that the width of the drop curb should be reduced. There is already vehicle access to the site, therefore the formation of the drop curb is not considered to significantly impact neighbouring amenity, but will in fact facilitate safe access to and from the field by larger agricultural vehicles and reduce damage to the carriageway. In view of this and following comments from the Highways Authority, it is considered that the width of the drop curb should remain at the originally proposed length. These comments can be viewed in the officer's report. Can we please go to the presentation? So this is an aerial view of the site in relation to the wider area with the application site highlighted with a yellow marker. The applicant's address is also highlighted, which is further south down the main street. Next photo. This is another aerial view of the site with the application site outlined in red. The objectors live at Meadowcroft, which is to the south of the access. Next photo. This photo shows a view of the existing access from across the street. This image shows the access from inside the field looking east towards the main road. Next. And this is the kind of looking in towards the field. So the last image just shows the access with the measurements annotated to show the extent of the drop curb. And that concludes the photo presentation. Thank you. The Sneinton Parish Council have stated that they have no objection, and these comments can be viewed on page 416 of the agenda. Yeah, and the recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Any questions? Councillor Cleary.
One very brief question. Can I just confirm that the only reason it's before us is because there's been one objection?
Yes.
Yep. Right, we have a speaker on this who's, I do apologise for the long wait, but you've seen the excitement that we have. You couldn't have spent a better night watching the television. Right. I think you know the routine. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I've had an opportunity to consider the reports of Miss Toolan and thank her for her due diligence in this matter. You're aware of the application. It's for a drop curb for an access which is already in existence. The reason we're here this evening is because there hasn't actually been a formal objection. There's been a neutral comment with an objection within the body of the same owing to the width on the basis of two grounds. The first, that it would look unsightly, and the second, that the neighbouring property would not be able to park two vehicles in front of her property. Highways have raised no concerns, and I would invite you to approve the application as recommended within the report.
Right, thank you. I hope you felt that was worth it. Right, that's it. We're going to debate, and I think this is your patch, Simon. No mention of Yorkshire Water, please.
Do you want to look?
Yes, please have a look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whilst I'm talking, Steve will look up and see how many discharges there've been. Because it's good information. Yes, I have no objection with this personally. What can one say? It's access into a field. Yeah, let's approve it. Come on.
Right, okay. We'll take Councillor Cleary as a second.
I will second this. In fact, it was a slip of the word when you said approve. You said improve, and I think it will improve it because it reinforces the verge and it's a proper highway crossing. Let's second it and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote. Thank you. Yeah, that was unanimous. Right, on to item 18. There's still another one, believe it or not. Okay, off you go, Ellie.
Thank you. Members, this is an application for variation of conditions of planning approval 21/01239. Planning permission was granted last year for the conversion of the building to form additional living accommodation. Condition 4 of this permission stipulated the existing south-facing first floor window required replacing with an obscure glazed and fixed window to protect the amenity of the occupiers of the neighbouring property. Since permission was granted, the applicants have altered the internal layout of the building, which has now meant that this window is required to be an escape window. The installed window is a side-hung casement window, obscure glazed and fitted with restrictor bar, which restricts the extent to which the window can be opened. The occupier of the neighbouring property has submitted an objection to the application, stating that whilst they appreciate the need for the escape window, in their view, the window should remain permanently shut except for use during emergency situations, with ventilation provided by other means. The extent to which the window can be opened with the restrictor bar in place is minimal and would not allow for any direct overlooking of the neighbouring property when closed or open. As installed, it is considered that the amenity of the occupiers of the neighbouring property is protected and that the amended proposal is acceptable. The first photo is an aerial view of the site, the outbuilding outlined in red. The host dwelling is to the northwest and the neighbouring property, Auburn Hill House, is annotated to the south. The next photo shows the building in question and is taken from the access track. The timber fence to the right of the photo is the boundary of the neighbouring property, and the window in question is within the brick gable elevation of that building. The next photo is taken within the building, and this was taken prior to the conversion of the building to show the relationship of the outbuilding with the neighbouring property and the level of overlooking prior to conversion. This is again within the building, but with the new window installed. And the next picture is a further photo of the window and is to show the level of overlooking that can be achieved when the window is open with the restrictor bar in place. The gap through the window is about 1 centimetre in width. And then the next photo is taken within the grounds of the neighbouring property looking towards the outbuilding. And at that point, the window was open at its maximum with the restrictor bar in place. Members should have received a copy of the late pages, which includes comments from Malton Town Council and further comments from the neighbouring property. There are no further updates, and the recommendation is one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
I have a question. Why didn't they fit a window that opened at the top?
Yeah.
So it pulled in and out so that you don't have to have that restrictor bar.
Which can be fire when escape windows.
Yeah.
Looking at, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I'm just interested to know how big a drop it is from that window down onto the ground.
I can.
It looked quite
measure
high
it.
in the gable.
Yeah. if
It
you
was,
go
it
back-
was the one in the gable, wasn't it? Yeah. I think, that one. That is not an inconsiderable bump on the head if you're struggling out of there in a rush after you've had half a bottle of vino. Yes, you would. In fact, you would install full length curtains, wouldn't you? Securely.
Right, okay. I think what that'll do for questions. We seem to have lost our Malton member. Would anybody like to take this one? Come on, Michael.
I'm going to move approval, and let's be serious about it for a moment. The only reason that we have these problems is the conflict between planning and fire regulations, and shall leave it at that. I think I'm going to move approval. I don't think that it's across a road. It is admitted it's a private access, but it is a distance, and as we've seen from the pictures, you've got to be fairly desperate to look out of there at all when it's open that distance of half an inch or thereabouts. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yes, councillor Thackeray. We have it moved and seconded. We will go to the vote. That is unanimous. That takes us on to item 19. Any other business? Oh, councillor Thackeray, you've not voted.
I'm sorry, I just didn't do it.
You've got to push the other button first.
Yes, it's still unanimous. Yeah.
It is, it's 2019.
19, any other business? I don't have any. 20, list of applications determined under delegated powers. Do we have any comments on that? I suspect not. Yes, councillor.
You have to clear me. It's still voting. Okay. My only comment is that it's a shame that we're losing two bank building in Malton, and it's not been replaced by a bank. That is literally my only comment. It just seems we're losing a bit of infrastructure forever. Look at different towns. They haven't got a bank at all. So is Malton next on the list?
Right, in that case, I declare an end to the enjoyment for the evening, and the meeting is closed. Oh, site visit, yeah. Yeah, we've got to work out it's a good job you said that. We're all too keen to get away. Tuesday the 8th. How are we doing? Tuesday the 8th. Yeah. 10 o'clock. Right. Yeah. Anybody refusing Tuesday the 8th? Yeah. Yeah, we're agreed then. Tuesday the 8th, 10 o'clock, Staxton. The meeting is definitely now closed. Good night and thank you.